Hello and welcome to another wonderful episode of The Best Games Period. I'm your host, Jack Gardner, and with me this week is nobody because this is an honorable mention. And a few of you might have noticed that we've been kind of scattershot on releases the last couple of weeks, and that's entirely due to the fact that we're kind of planning to take a little bit of a hiatus for the next month-ish. Just because it's the holiday season, things are difficult, people have lives, and we've been podcasting without really a break for us for almost like 2-3 years. I mean, 2 years with just this podcast, but again, Jeremy and Daniel and I have been podcasting together since 2012, so it's been a long road. We're going to take a little bit of a vacation, but that doesn't mean we aren't going to be recording and releasing episodes for you fine folks out there. So don't worry about that. And that's kind of what this episode is all about. Now, that's not what it's all about, but that's how we're going to open this episode. I'm going to explain that. I just explained it. And now we're going to move on and talk about The Legend of Grimrock. So I am very aware that this is kind of a niche category, but basically, in the early days of PC gaming, there was a very popular genre of game where players would explore dungeons and environments that consisted entirely of squares. It was like you'd explore different places on a gigantic grid map and uncover secrets and fight monsters and really just kind of have a really adventurous dungeon delving time. And one of those, I believe, was called Dungeon Master. And now Dungeon Master is probably one of the better known ones. There's also a few of the Ultima games kind of fall into this category as well. But it had it never really had a mass appeal. It was very much a niche genre. However, as the years kind of went on and game development became more and more complicated, this more simplified method of exploration and world interaction kind of fell by the wayside. And that's when you kind of got these Western RPGs popping up like, The Elder Scrolls. That'd be a good example of kind of trying to streamline all of that grid-based exploration into more of a real-time kind of element. So that is not to say that the grid-based approach didn't have its charms, and there are definitely still fans of it to this day. And actually, fans of that original grid-based genre got together around Dungeon Master and just kind of created a little community of it, or around it. And so there are still people who play Dungeon Master to this day and love it a lot. So, I mean, maybe one day I'll play Dungeon Master and we'll be able to talk about it on the show. That would be kind of rad. That would be pretty cool. But in the meantime, you basically have this... How do I set the stage here? In Finland, there were a bunch of people who got together and they were big fans of Dungeon Master. And they decided that around the year 2000 that they were going to make a clone of Dungeon Master. They were going to kind of create a new Dungeon Master and just kind of release it, and all just for fun. Just kind of do that for kicks and giggles. And they called it Dungeon Master 2000. Pretty solid name. And after taking feedback and kind of refining the concept, they eventually came up with a game called Escape from Dragon Mountain. And that came out in 2004. I believe you can still download that on the Internet Archive. So if you're interested in checking that out, you can download it there. But from there, the few of the people who worked on Escape from Dragon Mountain, 4 people from Finland. The Almost Human team consisted of Juho Salila, Petri Hakkinen, Antti Tihonen and Olli Pels. Olli Pels. I probably butchered all of those names. I don't speak Finnish. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry if you guys listen to this. But essentially they all got together and were like, hey, you know what? Let's take this design concept that we've been working on and playing around with, and let's actually make something that we could potentially sell as a standalone game. Like, not just a fan project. Let's make it a real game. Not that fan projects aren't real games. There are plenty of really great ones out there. So they came up with this idea for the Legend of Grimrock, which was essentially a modern resurrection of this franchise that has, for the most part, been pretty absent. Like, you see a couple blips here and there. I think Might and Magic 6 might have tried to do that. I might be thinking of a different series. If I make a mistake on that, I'm going to edit it out and you'll never hear it. But if I'm right, I'm going to leave it in and you'll hear all of this waffling. It'll be great. And so the team got together and they were like, hey, let's make this game. And so they proceeded to go into serious development around 2011. And what serious development for them meant that all four of them kind of put their livelihoods on the line and decided that they would pool their resources and attempt to collectively fund their game themselves without turning to Kickstarter or without seeking a publisher, because they didn't really trust publishers, and they couldn't actually set up a Kickstarter due to Finland has some laws against that, apparently, according to a Gama Sutra interview that they gave. But good news is, everyone loves an underdog story, and their studio, Almost Human, managed to put out The Legend of Grimrock, which ended up being wildly successful. It managed to stand out because of its unique gameplay that no one had really seen since like 20 years previous. That was the last time it was super popular. So there was a good amount of breathing room, making it much more novel than it might have been if it came out way back in the day. That being said, I happen to believe that The Legend of Grimrock is amazing. Like, it's genuinely a great game. And now it does have some problems that kind of hold it back. For me, personally, one of the things that gets me most involved into a game is kind of a storyline, and that's probably the weakest element of The Legend of Grimrock. It's not really the point of The Legend of Grimrock, but it's the weakest element, and that's probably what keeps me from getting fully excited about it, or at least as excited as I get about other games that do have a stronger narrative. The setup is that there is a team of 4 prisoners. You create the prisoners at the start. You kind of choose their race and their class and their stats and their special features and all that jazz. And they get taken up to the top of this mountain, Mount Grimrock, in this airship. And they have been granted clemency for their crimes, which is great. The downside is, in return for clemency, they get pushed into this giant pit that falls deep into the mountain. And then they wake up, and they're inside this gigantic dungeon, and there's really only one way out, and that is down. And each time these prisoners sleep, they hear kind of a voice in their heads saying, hey, come down to the bottom of this dungeon, and we can all get out of here. And it's... So, again, we spoil this show, or we spoil games on this show quite often, and it's not really... again, the narrative isn't the point remotely. If you care about spoilers, skip like the next 20 seconds of this podcast. So the voice ends up being a machine that has lured them down to the very bottommost floor of this labyrinth, and the labyrinth was constructed to keep people out and to keep the machine kind of dismembered and the voice directs you to reconstruct the machine, and it wakes up completely, and it's basically this undying construct that wants to get out and destroy the world. Luckily, with a lot of cunning and cool use of mechanics, actually, you can deconstruct the machine and attempt to make your escape, at which point the entire mountain kind of incinerates itself, and the fate of the survivors is left unknown. And that's the end of The Legend of Grimrock. So it's pretty straightforward. You're just going through this dungeon, but it's so fun. The movement is entirely grid based. So anytime you move forward, backward, left, right, you move an entire square in that direction. You can free look a little bit, so that's good. That keeps you kind of from feeling totally locked in place. The combat is unique in that you have 4 characters, and they're all arranged in a block. And if you take... Essentially, you need to click their moves to make them attack. So you need to click... each character has a left hand, right hand, and you can click each hand respectively to make an attack with whatever that character's holding in their hand at the time. And you find a variety of different weapons that have different, different aspects and, for some reason I want to say probabilities. That's not right. It's very late when I'm recording this. But these weapons have different properties. That's what I was trying to say. And the properties can be one-handed, two-handed. They can be a reach weapon, which means you can hit with that weapon from the back row, the back 2 parts of the party. And the characters can just do melee. They can do ranged with crossbows or bows and arrows or slings, or they can also use magic. So your playthrough is entirely different depending on what kind of characters you bring with you at the start. And that can lead to a lot of really interesting scenarios. Maybe you don't bring anyone who can cast magic. Maybe you go full rogue party for whatever reason. I don't know. But it's pretty versatile. It's not a complicated system by any means. But one of the things I think kind of keeps it more interesting is that you can always move. So if a monster is coming at you, you can move backwards and kind of time your attacks to kite around the creature. Now, that means you have to be kind of aware of whatever given space you're in and how those creatures attack. And so you can be backed into a corner, and that will be bad for you because you'll just get wailed on from 2 sides, 1, 2, 3 sides, however many sides. But that just means you have to keep a better track of what's going on around you, and the monsters themselves aren't super complicated, and there's some valid criticism in there of the monsters being kind of dumb and not particularly responsive to that tactic of kiting. But you also kind of need to do the kiting, because if you don't, these monsters will just rip you apart. They're no joke. And I remember the first time I played this game, I didn't really grasp the combat system, and so I just stood there. The very first enemy you fight, it's a giant slug, and I just stood there, and this giant slug just devoured almost all my team, and I wasn't sure how I was supposed to actually fight. I just stood there, I was trying to attack it, killed everyone. So you do actually need to kite these creatures and get a hang of the combat system before you make an actual good attempt to finish The Legend of Grimrock. Once you have it down, it's a pretty entertaining system. I think it's a pretty I think it's pretty effective at getting that nostalgic feel of games from yesteryear, while also providing kind of a new coat of paint. So, like, the game is actually really pretty, and for a game that came out several years ago now, it looks good. And some people have criticized it for not looking great, and I will admit the environments do get a little bit repetitive because you are in this dungeon for the entire game. Like, there's nothing else outside the dungeon that you get to look at or interact with. I believe Legend of Grimrock 2 does a little bit better job of that. There's a little bit more of an open feeling. You get to explore more. You're on an island. Highly recommend Legend of Grimrock 2 as well. It's a very solid game. But there's a special place in my heart for the Legend of Grimrock for just the way it showed that, yeah, these old games, these old systems that a lot of people loved and adored and have just kind of fallen by the wayside, a lot of those actually are still very viable. There's still a reason to play them, and there's still a reason that they were fun and enjoyable. And I think, it always helps to provide a fresh set of eyes and a new coat of paint to kind of win people over to an archaic system. But yeah, it is a good game, and it has it might have only that one environment, that dungeon environment, but I am gonna say it's very effective at creating kind of the atmosphere of the dungeon. It is creepy, and when you encounter new mystical things, it's kind of scary, and the unexpected kind of can turn a situation on a dime from being something you feel completely in control of to being, oh no, that thing can shoot fire, oh no, and that, I just like it. It's a very, at times it can feel almost Indiana Jones-esque, because you have to solve a lot of traps and puzzles, and solving those puzzles can often result in some unsavory consequences of perhaps getting thrust into like a pit full of monsters, or encountering some kind of deadly trap that involves poison or darts or fireballs or something like that, and a lot of running away and trying to figure things out on the fly. And it's just good. And there are a lot of, just a ton of different secrets to uncover. If you're particularly observant, you can kind of uncover these hidden panels in walls that will open up stashes of equipment and treasure that will help you on your way. And of the three different, there are 4 different races in the game. There's humans, centaurs, lizard people, and insectoids. And each of them, well, I don't think humans or lizard men have special feats that really change anything, but like the insects can take this natural armor feat that gives them, that makes them particularly hard to do damage to. If that's how you want to build it. They're also really good at casting spells. But my favorite is that the minotaurs. I might have said centaurs before. I meant minotaurs. They have a feat where you can collect skulls, and you'll find these skulls throughout the game. And the more skulls you have, the better your the more damage your attacks do. Which I think that's a fun little twist. And I kind of wish that Legend of Grimrock would get expansions that would have taken maybe the story different places. And again, Legend of Grimrock 2 came out. It wasn't quite what I would have liked in that regard. Like, there's a lot of different locales and new monsters and puzzles and dungeons, and there's even an expanded narrative component to it, but I think even more emphasis on story would serve the game well, and maybe character building or interactions between characters in a way that would be fun. I think there are a lot of different ways that one could improve upon this formula in the modern day to give the genre even more life. And a lot of that, and that might seem like I'm kind of down on the Legend of Grimrock, but what I like about it is that it shows what's possible in the genre. It opens up the door to something that a lot of people thought was pretty much dead, and is like, hey, guys, there's good stuff in here. There's good stuff. And I like that it opened my eyes to the possibilities that exist in that genre. So I highly recommend it to people who are just kind of itching for maybe something different, maybe something that will be a bit of a departure from kind of what's mainstream right now, open world type games. And yeah, maybe this will be definitely out of your comfort zone, especially if you've never played any of those older games, but I suggest anyone who's not familiar with this type of game to try and push through the initial strangeness of the system, because there's a lot to love in there. So yes, Legend of Grimrock, highly recommend that you check it out. It's a great time. I believe it's now on both PC and iOS and possibly Android. They created a port for mobile devices, so you can actually play it on your phone, possibly. I don't know. I haven't played that version myself, so I don't know if it's not as good or diverges from the original in any significant way, other than the fact that it's on a phone. But that being said, it's a really good time. So check it out. I believe it's like maybe $10 on Steam right now, probably less. And if you like it, then by all means check out Legend of Grimrock 2. I have a feeling Legend of Grimrock 3 will be coming out probably in the next year or two. That's just me. Because maybe one thing I didn't mention is they put all of their money on the line for this game, and it actually managed to make it to the top of the Steam charts. Like the top of the mainstream Steam charts. And so they made a lot of money off of The Legend of Grimrock so far, and I'm sure Almost Human is hot, coming in hot with a third one. Oh man, I can't talk. Why do I do a podcast where I have to talk? Jeez. Anyway, we will be back next week. If you have any suggestions on things you would like to hear us talk about on the show, it's going to be basically me holding down the fort for the next couple of weeks. So if you have a suggestion of an honorable mention you'd like to hear, or maybe a topic on podcasting or video games in general you'd like to hear me rant about for a little bit, tweet at the show, at bestgames, or tweet at me, at riverboatjack. And either way, I'll see it, and I'll maybe do it. Not gonna commit. Afraid of commitment. So that's that. And with all of that being said, you should definitely check out Extra Life, which is a fantastic charity that helps sick and injured kids in Children's Miracle Network hospitals all across the United States and Canada. So it's really cool. If you go sign up, you can actually choose which Children's Miracle Network hospital you want to support, and then 100% of your money, the money that you raise, goes directly to that hospital to help kids. So it's a gaming-oriented charity, and it helps kids, and you know where the money's going, and 100% of your money's going there, so what's not to love? Check it out over on extra-life.org, and you can also find a lot of the stuff that I write about and this very podcast over on community.extra-life.org. And that being said, also check out patreon.com/bestgames, because we have a Patreon, and this show costs money to run, and it would be nice if we were able to cover costs. So if you enjoy listening to the show every week, consider throwing us $1 every month, because we could use it, and you'll also get access to the occasional unique episode for backers only. So get on that. I'm gonna be uploading some extra content that is coming up. You know what I'll do, actually? I just made this decision just now. There's a project I'm working on currently with a couple other people. It's not really related to the Best Games period, but I am on it, so in a way it's related. And so I'll upload maybe a teaser episode of what to expect from that show that has yet to be announced. And you guys could check it out for yourselves. I think it's going to be a really fun time. And I'll probably talk about it next week on whatever I end up talking about for an honorable mention / podcast topic. So that being said, I hope you all have a lovely Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, whatever day you listen to this. I hope you have a wonderful day. And, yeah. See you on the flippity dippity.